are we there, everyone? This has been a little bit of a disaster.
Well, it's a good warm-up.
Well, like, oh, there goes my voice in your speakers.
Well, you didn't tell me you were going to get started, so let me mute that.
Yeah, I noticed that it stopped working. This is dreadfully embarrassing. I guess we have to start all over.
Okay.
Oh.
Ready when you are.
Yeah, well, I'll just go ahead and say you are. This is Boulder Bear. He is like me in enemy territory in the middle of the country, also known as Boulder, Colorado. And after being recently convicted and released for wrongthink, he is now free in the world to engage in capitalism and common discourse. I am being, of course, hyperbolic, but his unique experience with both the criminal justice system and capitalism gives us a really great opportunity to talk about economics and other important topics. And so we will be moving forward with the definition of capitalism as a system of economics based on the free exchange of goods and services with the private ownership or individual ownership of the means of production, and as socialism being the common ownership of the means of production and the fruits thereof.
Hello, everybody.
This is yeah. Professional outfit, guys. Professional. Very, very professional.
That's all right. I don't have a super loud house tonight. The kids are off playing.
Yeah. I am getting something off the TV, though.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me turn that down, and Xavier can... Yeah.
All right, so I will be keeping an eye on the chat, guys. So if you have any questions about running a business or Boulder's background or other subjects, I will be keeping an eye. You can ask them, and if I find them interesting, I shall ask them. And before we realized that that the little green box was not in fact working, we were talking about what the means of production are. So let's try and just jump right back into that, please.
Oh, you're right. Well, that there being two forms of means of production, and one of that would be so the overarching is the factors of production, and this comes directly from Marx. He described that the one system being of capital and the other being of goods and services, or mostly good, like land, things like that. So you have the raw materials and you have the people that invest. So both of those combined are the means of production.
Yes. All right. Yeah. So we've got basically currency which can be exchanged for supplies and extra labor, and then you've got what you can produce yourself with what tools you have on hand, or people who would agree to work with you.
Agreed.
And those, basically, when you boil down, are the means of production for everything. And the socialists will try to tell you, well, no, we mean factories, but if you think about it, a factory is nothing but just a large collection of tools that somebody else owns and worked to build and collect.
Yes and no. I've got a loan, let's say, and I use that loan to buy tools, rent out a warehouse, um, buy raw goods and raw materials from suppliers, and then start a company. So, did I start that company by myself? No. In my case, I started my company by myself with money I had
Yeah, but if you
earned.
did take out a loan, you took on the risk.
Yes, you took on the well. I still had risk. The risk was less because the only thing that I could lose would be things that I had personally invested in the company, and that form of private ownership. So when you take out a loan, do you have private ownership of everything at that moment, or do your investors have claim to that private ownership? Meaning that if you default on your loan, then they can come and take it. Nobody can take anything that I have because I've personally invested in myself only. There's no other investors in my company. That being said, a lot of the small businesses cannot do that. In my construction is what I do. In case people don't know, um, I had one $500 tool that I purchased at the very beginning of my career, and I still have it. It still works and works very well. It's made me everything that I have ever bought for my company or my kids or my life from that all stemmed from that one tool. My capital investment.
Yeah, so with $500 of capital, you were able to start a construction business that was able to generate, further capital. But say you don't have $500 on hand, you go to your brother Joe, hey, loan me $500, and I'll pay it back to you if the business is successful. And if the business isn't successful, then you can, I don't know, have my lucky jacket or something.
Sure, sure. Or
Which
I
is
will
what,
give you something
yeah,
else.
which is basically what you were talking about before, which is voluntary collateral, which is you put something that you do own up that the investor can take to kind of regain some of their losses if your idea doesn't work.
Well, I would have a minor question saying that let's say you did take that loan from your brother-in-law to get started of $500. If your company increased in value by 10,000%, does that mean that you have to pay him back 10,000% on his investment?
Only if that was what was in the agreement. Because
Okay, so
capitalism is all about voluntary exchange. Everything outside of that voluntary agreement, it's just not what you agreed to.
okay, let me lay down a little bit of just how I see our current form of capitalism or some basic idea. The capital accumulation, like you said, your basic investment. Um,
Savings and
you have
loans,
you have a free commodity production and exchange. Um, you have
goods and services.
private ownership of the means of that production. Now, I'm not told that I have to go out and work. Um, your own labor, your own wage, so to speak. Then your investment, which is again kind of what we described, and the private use of my labor means that I set my own prices for obviously by the rule of what the market will bear. So I'm able to charge what I want. I'm not told there's not a price control on that I can only make a certain amount per hour or I have to pay myself a minimum wage. A lot of times I end up working for less than minimum wage for an entire day where I'll work for 10 hours for and make $50. Now, who am I going to bitch to? I have nobody to yell at. Like, well, hey, why didn't I pay myself a minimum wage? I better go and cry to somebody. That's how business goes. Some days you make money, and some days you try not to lose as much as you have to.
Well, yeah, and as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you carry the risk, and even more risk if you want to hire somebody. because then you do actually have to pay the minimum wage, at least in this country.
Mm,
Well,
unless
yes, Slap Weasel, you are correct. The true minimum wage is zero. But
that's it. And I would agree with what he said because there are several agreements, like you had alluded to, that people that I have hired in the past will agree to, or they won't work for me. And that is if there isn't money to be made, then obviously they're paid first, but they are also paid according to what we made. And if we made very little, they've agreed to take less than minimum wage. Let's say that. Now I know it's not legal, but it's an agreement that I have made with people so that they have some investment of their labor in our outcome as well. Because hiring people for an hourly work and doing what I do, you will get exactly that amount of benefit out of them per hour if that's all they care to do. So, what I'm saying is, some people will work harder than others.
yeah, yeah, I work construction. I know what that's like.
So, on that quick topic, I have three principles that I hire people on that some that may benefit other people if they're ever looking to hire or even looking to assign a value to themselves at the job that they work for their boss. And I call it the three A's. The first one is attitude. Okay, it's pretty easily described. Do you have a good attitude? Are you always are you cranky around your coworkers? Attitude can also be, do you show up on time? Do you look presentable? Um, having a good attitude it helps everybody around you. So attitude on a scale of 1 to 10, you better not be coming to work at a 1 every day of the week. You've got to have a good attitude. The second is aptitude. So in aptitude, I describe it in what I do as, can I show you how to do something once and or twice if it's complicated, or three times, but the ability for you to learn for yourself and do sort of thinking on your feet problem solving skills. Do you have the aptitude to do what I do? That you'd be surprised. The kids these days that I've hired, some of them need to be trained how to use a hammer. That's not a joke. Um, then the third one, in again doing construction, is ability. Can you physically do this job? Your benefit to me comes from your ability to do this job.
Oh,
Can
that's
you get?
ableist. You need to hire a trans
Oh,
midget in a
absolutely.
wheelchair with
I've
no
hired a couple of
arms.
gi- I've hired a couple of ginger midget retards, and and they basically ended up getting bus money home by lunchtime.
You can't call them that word.
I use all the
Yeah, yeah.
words,
Well,
all the words except for curse words, which I'm doing as a favor for you tonight.
yes.
I understand I might have been cussing like a convict the other night, but
Well, you did
you know,
just get right out of jail,
yeah.
and the so I only joke about the anti-discrimination laws because as someone who works construction, I know how completely asinine the it is to say you can't discriminate, especially based on physical ability. Because when you're putting, 80, 90, 110-pound piece of steel on your shoulder, you have to be able to do that. Otherwise, well, that piece of steel is not going through that man door.
Okay, here's an example. I have hired women, which is rare. Just being again in the industry that I'm in, there are not many people, women, that want to do or can do this job. And that woman knew that she was being paid less. She wasn't being paid less every day, but on the days where it required a certain amount of physicality, she was earning less than people that were working or lifting harder or could carry more or could physically do more in the same amount of time. However, I was also paying her more than the other guys on the job when she would talk to customers, because it's something that I normally don't want, or not necessarily allow, but don't want an employee to be talking to my customers. If they have a question, then you'll say, let me go and find Troy, and he'll answer your question. Oh, by the way, if you all didn't know, that's my real name. Um, I'm not promoting my business because none of you necessarily in this conversation or the people that will see it after will ever be needing my services. So the the advertisement is obligatory.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Boulder exclusively tiles prisons. By the way, that's 100% true. And so, unless you run a prison, you can't hire him.
I've worked from every company from Fortune 500, the largest employers in my area, all the way down to the poorest people.
Wow,
Literally
that's really
don't.
impressive. B West, 240 for a woman. Good deal.
Right. So what I'm saying is, if there's 100 bags of concrete to move, and they're all 75, 80 pounds, and I've got a guy that can lift two of them at a time and he carries in 70 of them, 80 of them, and she carries in 10, and I have to carry the rest to make up for it. She's not making as much that day. But if she gets me, if she's, I'm specifically referring to one woman that worked for me. She was great at talking to the client, at literally distracting the client so that they wouldn't upset me. And so she had those skills that Frank and I didn't have to talk to the client as much. And so she kind of schmoozed, and everybody knows about schmoozing your clients.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I liked it
Oh,
when she
that's
told
yeah,
when
like
she
saying
told
that's a
them
great
that.
looking hat there, Boulder.
Yeah, it's my Kentucky hat. It's Kentucky season. I'm a Kentucky basketball fan. Get over it. I hate all other teams.
Go sports ball. Hooray for the other team.
Modern day slavery at its finest. College basketball, I mean, not professional sports. This is a college basketball team, so they're not being paid, and quite literally, the owners of the NCAA and other beneficiaries make all the money off these poor kids' backs. So
Oh
I
yeah,
do have a problem with that.
they literally sell millions of dollars worth of merchandise with their actual faces printed on that they don't get to see a cent for, and it doesn't even go to their education either. It's a bit wild.
Yeah. So back to the benefit of a small company. So in my area, I I have one more A that I'd forgotten, and it's one that I never tell to people that I hire, and that's ambition. Because if you tell somebody to be ambitious, it doesn't work. Yeah, and you also can't pay someone to be ambitious. So the more money they make is only they think based on the production of their value. So the more ambitious people get raises faster than the less ambitious people, even if they are lifting the same amount of bags of concrete, let's say. The reason being that that level of ambition will tend to filter down in other things that I'm doing. Like when I'm not watching, if I'm out in the truck and everybody's inside working, the ambitious person I know is earning me more than the others. So it's sort of a behind your back instinct
Yeah,
that you know,
it's the difference between the hustler and this is the guy who wants to slack off while you're not looking.
which happens, and they don't tend to last very long. So anyway, there's my three hiring A's, the three A's. If you and I'm realistic, I'm not saying I'm a level 10 in any of those from day to day. You know, like I said, your attitude can change based on your what's going on in your personal life, or
Or you could have a bad lunch.
you could,
Yeah.
yeah. But your overall ability to keep those at a high level is going to benefit you in any job that you have. From uh, again, the when you're working when the boss isn't watching, those traits are needed in some level. And I've kind of prided myself over the years that I've hired um, people off the street, literally homeless people, and got them paychecks. And then we worked and got him his first truck. And then he worked and worked and worked for me. And then he started his own company and now has a house with two kids, a wife, and a life when he was homeless 5 years earlier. It took 5 years of hard work, but he had the ambition to change, and he did.
Yeah,
Then
a
I've
job is better than a handout for sure.
Well, then the kids like I was describing, her it's sometimes more of like a favor to a friend. She's like, "Hey, you're hire my son. He just dropped out of high school. He's never had a job. He's 18, and oh, by the way, you have to teach him how to use a hammer." Um, that is
Oh,
very.
like it really wasn't a joke.
It wasn't. No, no. It took him 30 taps on a nail because he was choked up so much. He was standing right over it. And poor kid, I showed him a couple of times and he just didn't have the aptitude to understand the physics of a hammer. So again, he didn't last very long. But I gave him 30 days, like I will give anybody a trial for 30 days. Um, there have been some obvious example. I caught one guy stealing from me on the first day. He was gone. Another guy stealing from a client. He was gone. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah.
it's
Violating the right to property is not a very good thing to do with a staunch capitalist around.
No, no, not a good idea. Those are sort of the liabilities that I have. I tell people, don't hurt yourself or the house, don't hurt the clients, anything. And so my liability will extend to the health and happiness of people that work for me and the client. So I've had instances where somebody was carrying something too heavy for them and they've fallen into a wall, broke the wall, um, things like that. But generally, if you pay attention, you're not going to have too many liabilities in what I do. Don't burn the house down, don't flood it, don't break walls. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's a bit different in industrial construction. What you're being up in high places, tight places, it's just inherently more dangerous, and you're working with like jackhammers and heavy equipment and all that. It carries an inherent bodily risk, and so like
Oh, I never give a person a knife on the first day.
yeah,
That goes back to my first day.
well
Me
yeah,
and my friend Josh were hired
it's why you
to
make a lot of money working construction.
yeah,
It's so risky to your own personal safety. Just
and the long term health of your body.
yeah,
Aches and pains and
just by the very nature of the tools that you're using, you could hurt yourself very badly if something goes wrong.
yourself or the house. Yeah, those are the two things to worry about.
Hmm.
Um, I've got a few other rules, but they're mostly common sense. There is no cussing on the job site. That's why I probably cuss like a sailor or a convict when I get home. But no cussing on the job site. It comes out of respect for people are paying you to be in their home to do something that they could do if they had the time and the tools. The
And
knowledge,
the
anybody
knowledge.
can learn it. Well, and this isn't rocket science. There are some tricks of the trade, but basically it's how to manipulate a tool
Well,
to.
it's like not everyone can be a rocket doctor. I've been in some places where like I was up on the ranch. I did some work, and some of the things you wouldn't believe, like the shower had a T going. You know how you get a shower valve, right? And it's got the four connections so that you can have a spout for it too. But I had a
Yeah.
walk-in shower, but I needed to replace the valve, and we cut a hole in the wall to find it. We find that they had put the down toward the spout, a pipe in there, and capped it off so that they could sort of, sort of stabilize the valve with with a little clamp down low on that pipe.
Hmm.
Instead of putting a stud next to the valve and putting screws through the screw holes on the valve like you're supposed to.
Right.
So
I see. Now I have a picture of what they were trying to do, and the down spout would have been used for a tub
yeah,
had your shower had a tub, but it wasn't needed. So oftentimes they're capped off.
well, you normally you just buy a NPT
Mm,
plug
yeah,
because
yeah,
most of the time it's got NPT, and then you sweat the fittings on, put your nipples on,
yeah. You could both ways would be fine, either capping it off or plugging it up, but it would still, or the valve doesn't have one because it's a proper valve for a shower.
or it's a sweat. Oh yeah, it doesn't even come with a spout. Yeah, which would be preferable, but most kits that you buy have all of the fixtures. But
Yeah, these days.
like I say, most people they look at something that you do with your hands, right, and they're completely lost. They have an office job. They went to school for 12 plus years. That would be
Yeah,
yeah,
12 plus years of a meaningless
like
general studies education.
probably four, no, 16 plus years because most people do go the full four.
Oh, more than.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
a little background on me. I have a biology chemistry degree. A lot of people don't know that. From Montana State. I graduated in 2002, and I had my oldest daughter. We I didn't birth her. Okay, I'm a male. Um, my senior year, so that was a very difficult year.
yeah. How dare
Um,
you guys assume his gender?
right. So when I got to Montana from Colorado,
Yes,
I
yes,
had
Andrew, wear your flat cap. Everyone should wear a flat cap. They are
yep.
the superior cap.
This is just a little background in case people in the chat who don't know me from the Hangouts or had known any of the background. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, born in Kentucky. Um, I was raised in a very liberal town with the same commiserate education from public institution. I went to Boulder Gets High. Um, and yes, it did get high even in school. Our teachers got high, our janitors got high, our assistant principals got high. Um, maybe not all of them at school like I used to. So I was a B plus average student, probably mostly because I was more interested in getting high, banging co-eds, drinking beers with my buddies, and playing sports. So I did all of those things with vigor. Then school wasn't really; it was more of an afterthought. But I did go to the University of Northern Colorado for 1 year, where my brother was a basketball star, and we were both star basketball players. So I didn't get a scholarship; he did, and but I still wanted to be near him to go to his games. And it's a town just maybe 30 miles north of here. So I did that for a year,
Ah,
where I
so you're one of
continued.
them white slaves. Okay.
Yeah. I actually tried to walk onto the team, but again, there's such a difference between high school. You can be a star in high school and still not play on any of the smallest college basketball team. It really is a completely different level, and it's a different level from small college to big college to professional. It's
What's the
just
difference between drawing from a small talent pool to a statewide
yes,
talent pool and sometimes
from
beyond?
millions to thousands to hundreds. It
Like
definitely in the world, out of the entire world. So
I knew guys in my high school who wanted to go to Iowa State for their wrestling program, and I'm all the way in California.
yeah.
So so you're not even necessarily drawing from your own state.
No, no, definitely not. So after going to UNC for a year, I got straight D's. Nothing. I didn't try, so that's why you get the grades you get. And rather than continue to waste money on higher education, it was, well, what do you want to do? So I took a year off, decided what I wanted to do, and that was again do drugs and bang ladies. And so I did that very, very well for that year, and got kind of sick and tired of that and wanted a little bit more. So I went to Montana State, where I had to get a job. I got 3 jobs, and I put myself through school. I had one family member up there, and I was able to get in-state tuition. So I went to Montana State for 4 years and paid for it myself, and I got straight A's. And it was because I was paying for it myself. I had no idea that I wanted to go into chemistry, and more chemistry than biology. However, having my daughter my senior year, I wasn't making enough money to both go to school, pay for books. Rent up there is ridiculous. It's like $100 a month to get you a 3-bedroom house. I think I paid $200 a month and I rented an entire apartment, another $100 in bills. So for $300 a month, the rent was nothing. Um, the school was also a lot cheaper back then and at that school. So I think I total paid.
You got a big apartment for $3 a month?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And Montana in the late 90s was a gold mine for the value that you got compared to Boulder, where this 3-bedroom house that I'm sitting in is five
Oh, I'm
hundred
sure
thousand
it's
dollars.
different there now, but geez,
It's not. It's
still.
not really. You can get this same 3-bedroom house in Billings, Montana, or Bozeman for 100 grand.
Ugh. Well, it's just
And
another reason to build the wall. Stop propping up the property prices of the boomers.
yeah, right. Okay, so again, I I chose to do this because I was good at it. And the guy who trained me, his name was Troy. And so I was Troy number 2, or Gopher Boy, or Bitch Ass, or any of the names you give the 21-year-old college kid in a very conservative town who, coming from Boulder, I thought I was conservative. Like I was a conservative in Boulder, but I was not a conservative,
Not
if you know
not
what I
not an
mean.
American one, just like a
No,
bolder one.
no, not in reality, and not in small business conservative. So again, I was right next to these guys. One of my good friends was a few years older than me. He had a job there, and he got me a job, and I started out at the bottom. You start in the trenches. I started working for $6 an hour cash when the minimum wage was $8. Yeah, let
Yeah,
that
yeah.
sink in.
Well, I started working for $4 an hour, but then again, I was also 8 years old, so that seemed
Well, we've
like
got
good money to me.
Oh, good money, and at the time, I was being paid cash under the table because again, our the boss, he would, instead of getting the clients to pay him to his company name, which he had a company name, and so did his brother, and they were kind of partners in this. He would get them to write the check to him personally, and then he would drive to their bank and cash it. And if the job was more than $10,000, which is the IRS requirement that they have to report that you took out an $11,000 in cash out of a bank, he would get them to write 2 checks. And
Sounds like he was going on his own little tax revolt.
oh, absolutely. Yeah. The guy, he was a captain in the Marines that really, I had grown up with a lot of work ethic, just, chores. I had my own company, cutting grass, shoveling snow, babysitting. I did all those. So when I was younger, the work ethic had nothing to do with school or with when I wanted money. I wouldn't had jobs. I sold shoes. I've uh, neon pretzel at the mall. I've worked at movie theaters. I've actually, that year that I took off between UNC,
So
I was a
basically,
special ed
you
teacher.
learned economics by participating in the economy.
Right. And when I was a special ed teacher, I was going to say, where I would push wheelchairs, serve lunch by hand, and change diapers for the special ed department at a high school in Boulder County. That year, I loved that job, but I hated the people that I worked with. They were bitter, bitter people that hated what they did, they treated the kids like crap. So anyway, just a little diversion. Don't hate what you do. Keep looking until you find something that you love doing. And I love building with my hands. So here I am. I have a choice. Senior year, do I use my degree? And the jobs that were hiring up there at the time were mineral and petroleum. Go figure. They wanted job site supervision, and biology had a track where you would basically uh, collect samples in the field for 6 months at a time, living in your truck, driving 4 hours and out into the field. Like California and Montana is a very large state. An out of town job in Montana is 4 to 6 hours away, and you're
But
still in Montana.
Andrew Kelly points out a misconception is that people have that corporations just have money to give to their franchises or something. I've run into
Just have money.
Yeah, they just have money. I've run into that problem when discussing minimum wage with people. They're like, well, the McDonald's Corporation will just give the McDonald's store more money to pay the employees. They have it backwards. They think that the corporation produces money and then they just give it to people who do jobs.
Okay. Yeah, that
Have you run into
I
that?
wouldn't go to any. I wouldn't go to any job site and start espousing that shit. So I was called a communist on my job site because again, I was a 21-year-old college kid that was doing this
Well, you
part
were
time
from
and thought I
Boulder,
was.
so it was probably
And I was
accurate.
from Boulder, and I was from Boulder, so I was the obligatory liberal, even though I was trying to not be. It just came out that way. You thought I knew everything, and I
I'm not
didn't.
a
So I got,
liberal. I agree with working for stuff
yeah.
at a minimum wage.
Well, Troy was actually the one that taught me about like, look, if I make $100 today, you're going to make 50 of it, and I'm like, but that's not fair. I worked for 10 hours. You owe me $60. No, it's not fair, but that's what you're going to work for.
Well, why would it be fair if
So
the
that
job made him $100, but he only gets 40? But
Well, he sat there and worked right next to me. It's not like, okay, so when
yeah,
I'm talking about working, we both worked on our hands and knees that entire day. And he's been doing this for 20 years and he only made $50, but he split the $50 with me, even though it was less than what I would technically earn as a minimum wage for that day. And that really always stuck with me
well,
that, um,
the agreement was a profit or earnings share, not a wage. It's different.
yeah, it's an agreement. And on days where he could literally sit in his truck all day and I did the entire job, if that job was worth $300, he would bump me up and split it in half and I would make $150 instead of $60, you see? So I had an incentive and yes, it was a profit motivation, but my ambition, I worked the same amount the same level of hard both the day that I made $10 less and the day that I made $100 more. So that conviction is what has always led me to have success. It's not that it's how you work when the boss isn't watching that gives you the self-respect for earning your own living.
Yeah, actually, that brings up something kind of uh, a good point because criticism that socialists always have of us is you just want the profit, man. You just want a profit. Profit motive is just greed, man.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard that repeatedly
Yes. Yes.
in exactly
From
that tone,
employee
from exactly
from a
that
lot.
tone, from someone who has inhaled something that is definitely not marijuana because they would totally have those thoughts sober.
I hear it from people that I've hired. They're like, they see me get $1,000 check for a job that we both worked on the job, and I didn't cut them in for 500 of it. Okay, I paid them their hourly wage. I gave them a bonus, maybe if I felt like they deserved it or they did exemplary work they would get a bonus without asking for it. So they were happy they got it. But sometimes they would see that check, they wouldn't get a bonus, they would only get their hourly wage. And then they would start bitching about why don't I make percentage? Oh, you're not there yet. You don't have the right to ask for percentage yet. Well, why? Well, do you have any tools on this job? No, just me. Okay, there's one answer. Did you do 20 years in the trenches to get the respect to be called to do this job to make $1,000 in a day? No. No, but I did the work right next to you, so I deserve 50%. That's not the way this life works. Okay, so I do
Well,
not
that wasn't the agreement, buddy.
well here it's that same.
Right, I called you. We laid out the terms before. You knew what I'd be making for this job before, and you said you would do it for the hourly rate, and now you're complaining because I have more money than you.
I often joke, I'm like, well, if you want to make some, what are you going to seize half my tools? What are you, a communist? You're going to seize the means of my production so that you can all of a sudden make 50% of the job?
But the thing is that criticism it's disingenuous because they also want to profit because all profit is the difference after a trade when you measure your advantage before the trade versus after.
Agreed. And I have a quick side note.
Like
So,
you do a job for $1,000 to put new tiles in a bathroom. The
mhm,
client has a fancy new bathroom. You have $1,000. Who won?
we both did.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what profit is. You hire someone for, I don't know, $12 an hour. You get 8 hours of valuable labor. He gets $12 an hour. Who won?
Well, I have a question then. So when we're talking about wages, and I'm right there, and I'm seriously, I'm the boss that is on the ground with you doing the work. I'm not going to ask you to do something that I've never done 100 times or wouldn't do that day. Okay, so I'm not the guy pointing fingers. I'm right there, shoulder to shoulder with you, lifting, cutting, carrying, everything, demolishing. I love demo day. Give me a sledgehammer and go to town, and I will get out a year's worth of aggression. So how did I lose that job in Montana is an interesting story because I had started at the bottom and I was doing basically nothing but flooring. And in flooring, there are lots of different floors that people walk on. Everybody can look down right now, and I bet somebody's looking at carpet, somebody's looking at tile, somebody's looking at hardwood. The amount that you make or earn is depending on what you're putting down. So it's a different rate depending on the material. I knew that tile and more specifically shower work made more money than people that do carpet. So I started with carpet and then I learned how to do vinyl and then I learned how to do wood and then I learned how to do tile and that was great. I was still only working on the floor though. And floor people make less than people who stand up. Like a tile guy in a shower makes a lot more than a tile guy on the floor. So I took some money that I had, I didn't have much, and I invested it in education. And I bought a course, the only course of its kind in the entire country to learn how to do tile specifically was taught in outside of Dalton, Georgia. It's called Ceramic Tile Education Foundation. It's still around today, and it's run by basically donations from the tile manufacturers that donate to this education so that they can train people to be certified in how to do tile the right way. And there is a tile code book for our country and the world. It has to be done
There's a code book for every trade, by the way.
right. And so in ANSI, American National Standards Institute, ANSI, there is a portion of the ANSI book, which is 2,000 pages thick, that deals specifically with doing tile. There's another portion just wood. There's another portion just carpet. And these
Just
are
plumbing, just
just
electricity.
plumbing.
Yeah.
Yep. All of these codes. And if you think about being in a trade union, these people have to do it to code. They have to do it based on the ANSI standard. So the ANSI standard for tile is
Even if you're
ANSI
even if you're not
118.8.
even if you're not in a union, your work still needs to pass an inspection if you're selling a new house
Absolutely.
or if
And
you're doing
we can get into
anything
that in just a sec.
or if you're doing anything in an industrial capacity.
So let's I'm gonna wrap that portion of my
Yeah.
background description
Yeah,
up.
by the way, Andrew Kelly, he did already talk about his background and education and all of that.
Yes, I did. Um, so where am I at? I'm okay. I'm at this trade school, and at the end of it, you have to pass 1,000 question test, and nobody had ever passed it by the end of the week. So I sat down in a hotel room on a Sunday, and I did the entire test, and I missed two questions. And so I'm pretty proud of that. I'm thinking, oh, I know everything now. No, Now you have the background, and then I went back to work. So now I'm no longer the carpet grunt. I'm no longer having to do. I'm the tile crew. Okay, so I've just jumped up from $10 an hour because I had started to make more and more money over the few years. Every 3 months, he would give you a raise based on how good you were. So I was getting raises left and right. And so I was making like $10 an hour and doing really hard work, but I was learning a lot. So I come back from this tile school and I'm like, okay, now I can do tile. Mm. Now I can do tile that the way it's supposedly supposed to go. So there's a lot of learning curve, but I instantly was making,
Yeah, there's
I was
just a
going from
little bit
making,
of a gap between the theory and the book
yeah,
and the
and the
practice.
reality.
There's a lot of adjustments you have to make on the fly, as anyone who's
Well,
done any trade work will tell you.
it didn't take me long, but I basically quadrupled my income in less than 6 months. And that was the summer of my senior year, um, in college. Here comes
Yeah,
my first
those
daughter.
those of you in the audience, live and watching later, learn a trade, any trade.
Hmm. Well, a lot of people look down on me in the trades, and I tell them, "Hey, I do flooring. I have to work down there, so I don't care if you look down on me." That's a flooring joke, but it's not always funny. Um, I do make a lot more money now than I did then, but I make that money. So the first job, it's going great. I have a brand new baby, and I don't know if you know what you do. You're on construction sites. There's a lot of leftovers, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
get done with a tile job. You got 3 boxes left over. Um, the store, if you're working for a flooring store, they want that back. Okay, that's their leftovers. Um, if
Yeah,
you're doing a carpet,
if you got hired through the store.
yeah, if you got hired through the store and you're working for them. So the leftovers when you're doing carpet is called a remnant.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can go to a flooring store right now and get a carpet remnant and pay
Way
a lot,
less.
less, a
That actually
lot
works
less.
for most material. The trick is to not go to Home Depot, go to any other supply house, and
Yep.
you can get a remnant or a drop off of anything, steel, wood, flooring, anything.
So all these remnants are worth a lot of money, right? And some stores wanted them back and some didn't. And so our particular company was working for every store in town. So we had leftovers from one store and they're like, don't bring that back here. We don't have the room for it. We don't sell remnants or leftovers. We already made our money off of what we sold to the client when they contracted us to do this whole house of carpet. So you're talking about throwing away $300 to $500 worth of brand new carpet once a week, twice a week. So at the house that I had, it had a very large garage, and we started to accumulate leftover material, my buddy Josh and I. So the bosses didn't want it. They didn't want it filling up their garages. Their wives would get on them about bringing this stuff home, and it just sits in your garage. So anyway, a couple of times we would have leftover tile, leftover carpet, pad, whatever it was, and we'd have a yard sale. Okay, we would make good money off these yard sales, 1,000, 2,000 bucks in a day, selling the carpet for even less than remnant prices. Um, so one day, you guys need to go down. One day, one of the sorry, I'm just dealing with a couple of kids that shouldn't be here in this room while I'm I asked them not to. So anyway, I have all these leftovers. We're having a yard sale like we have done probably 5 times by now. And the owner of one of the stores that did want the stuff back, that we always took his stuff back to him, came to the yard sale.
Oh,
Yep. And he thought that the materials that we were selling were leftovers off of his jobs.
but doesn't he have records?
Yeah, it just didn't matter. It's how it looked. Okay. So we tried explaining that to him. It didn't matter. At that point, he fired us both on the spot. Now, he didn't really have the right to fire us. So what he did was he just told the boss, Troy, that if he ever saw me or Jason on any of his jobs, he would fire the entire crew and they would no longer get work from his company. And at the time, he ran one of the largest construction and flooring companies in the city. So there goes there goes my first job. I thought I was doing well, all for some leftovers. That was a pretty important lesson. However, before the end of
Yeah,
that
he did you dirty, man.
before the end of that day, I had already made 3 calls to stores in Boulder where I had grown up and had a job. I moved down here the next week, and I've been doing
Yeah,
construction in
exactly.
Boulder for the last 19
Trade,
years. Yeah,
trade.
trade. I can go to any state, any city. If I like where I live,
It's
that's the only reason I'm
like
going to work there.
homeowner service. You don't really get that. It's not as lucrative as industrial trades, but homeowners will pay you to do things that you think are really simple and easy, and they'll pay you hundreds of dollars to do it. So it's a really good move to learn how to do that kind of stuff. And even if you don't end up doing that as business, then you could end up doing your own household repairs. So it's a good thing to learn a trade. And we can skip ahead to your recent experience to socialism, I think.
Oh, well, which one are you referring to?
The more authentic one, I think, the one involving guns and bars and stuff.
I don't know the story you're referring to. The the company that I have now that I've run isn't something that that's my experience in capitalism is I own my tools. I've worked for every one of those tools. And in this city that I live in, I put up with a lot more regulation on my industry than other people in other parts of the country. You know, especially coming from California, everything that they screw with in California in construction comes here in 5 years. So when they put emissions on no, I have a noise emission. I cannot cut tile in Boulder County before 9 a.m.
You get annoyed with us, we get annoyed with New York.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The codes that you have to jump through are ridiculous, but they're nothing like the Northeast, like you were saying. Um,
Yeah.
I had flown to do a tile job for my brother's pastor in Nashua, New Hampshire, and this is 15 years ago, and I was still just getting started. So he flies me out there. I put all of these tools into a suitcase and a very small tile saw. This thing weighed 120 pounds. I had to pay $100 to get it on the plane.
I'm sure
And
that drill looks really suspicious on the X-ray.
oh, after 9/11, oh man, I had knives, hand tools, all sorts of stuff. I just tossed like 50 business cards in there and zipped it up. And they went through it. They had put a little note like your bag was checked by TSA or Homeland Security. Anyway, I'm doing this tile job on a weekend, basically for nothing but the plane ticket and some because it's his pastor. Anyway, I'm cutting tile on the driveway on a Sunday. I remember,
Favorite
and
job.
these two Goombas are walking up the driveway. I mean, leather jackets in the summertime, just no neck, walk up to me, and I'm not a big guy, a skinny kid, and I'm like, "Hello, what can I do for you?" Yeah, what are you doing? I'm doing some tile for this pastor, and yeah, I'm gonna need to see your union card. Like, excuse me? Like it's just tile, it's just flooring. Oh yeah, we have a flooring union here, and you're not working with with papers. Like, I don't understand what that means. Colorado doesn't have very few unions. Even if you have to follow a code, we have like 2, 3 unions in the whole state.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm not familiar with
There's
it.
just like safety code, and then there's licensure, which is hell.
Apparently, up there's a flooring union, and if you're not a part of it, you can't cut tile and install it in your own house or do it for a friend. Like I said, I wasn't being paid, so they I didn't think legally they had any ground to stand on, but yeah, they
They
made the
probably
pastor.
don't have any leg to stand on, but they're large and intimidating.
Yes. The pastor came out of the house. Okay, guys, come on. And he walked off down there. And I think he paid him a little bit of cash and they left. But it was just like my first experience in the unions where like, it's, it's unfortunate, but I'm a strictly
Yeah.
anti-union
So,
when it comes to the trades.
well, that's a good point because when it like when it comes to collective bargaining, sure, group up and sort of go to your employer together if that's what you have to do. And if you need to like hire someone to be a bargainer for you, sure, do that. And that's basically what a union ought to be. However, if you think that you can force everyone who practices a trade to join up with your union and hire your negotiator and follow your rules, then I think you've stepped over a line because now you're using force.
Let me answer a question from the chat real quick. Fistio Doyle asks, do you ever worry about asbestos in old houses? And the answer is yes, especially in the West. Um, there are things that are by code that I agree with, and I will do them every time. And asbestos is one of those. Those require another level of demolition, and it's called remediation. And it's for the health and safety of not just you, the person working in there, or the employees that you bring in, but the homeowner and the neighborhood. If you demolish a house that's laden with asbestos, that asbestos will travel hundreds of yards from the house that you're working on. Um, it is pretty easy to spot in my business. Slap weasel, the very few materials for sure had it, and one of them are the 12 by 12 vinyl composite tile, which is a very thin tile like you would see in gas stations, commercial businesses, churches,
Oh, the
school.
black and white.
Yeah, the black and white. So that's a VCT tile, and it was put down with a black glue that also had asbestos in it. And so one of the things you run into in my experience here is that they'll want you to tile their basement. They've had a flood or something like that in the past. They don't want to put carpet, they want tile, but they have VCT down already. You not only have to remove the VCT that has asbestos in it, but then you have to mechanically scarify and grind off the glue. So the biggest danger is when
Oh
you,
yeah, you have to
uh,
get a big vacuum grinder in there.
yeah. So I've got HEPA dustless HEPA grinders that can grind in a clean room. Like I do have a
Hmm.
client, Oracle, that
Yeah,
I grind.
I've seen those before. They usually do that for asbestos flooring in factories. Not asbestos, sorry, the
Well,
epoxy
epoxy floors. Yep.
floorings. Yeah,
Another thing that I always pay attention to is lead-based paint,
yeah. Fistio
and
Doyle,
so
good plan. You now have not contracted mesothelioma because you told her no.
yeah, exactly. There are things that are against your health, and I do make sure that we use respirators, safety glasses, gloves, all the safety equipment. That's not something. Oh, that's
Yeah,
just a.
PPE is a really big deal. Like
It is.
sometimes it gets in the way, sometimes it's safer to not have it, but you got to train your guys to have a good discretion. Good discretion. So
Well, now I call it controlled demolition. So we're not going in there swinging hammers as hard as we can to knock it down. There's a way to take something down so that you don't hurt yourself, the house, or the neighbors in the case of contamination. So, yes, that's a good question. It is something that I worry about. PPE is a big deal, and there's a bunch of good old boys out there. They're like, oh, forget that. They don't wear, safety glasses, and well, I value my eyesight.
yeah, yeah. But for someone like me, you got to order some special ones, but it's really important. It's an important step to take.
We had a guy
But
at one of the stores that
yeah,
I
so
worked for that was using a chop saw.
you've got the whole licensure, the codes, the hoops you got to jump through just to be able to work in the trade that you train or pursued for years, and that's a pretty big barrier to entry, right?
Also,
It stops a younger person like you who has the
yes.
will and energy to start out with nothing but your own two hands.
So those are more of a those are more of guidelines, yes, but the one that really gets business owners and that intimidates them is all of the background, the back office stuff. Okay, how do I get licensed to do business? How do I get business insurance? How do I get a business bank account? Those three things I'm constantly teaching people. Okay, you go these days, luckily, you would just go online and start a LLC or an S corp or get a trade name. Any one of those is less than $50. You don't have to hire an attorney to draw up your business plan and go to a bank. You start, at least in my type of industry. But those three things are the most important. It's your company, your insurance, so you can work, which isn't as erroneous as you want to be protected in any kind of company that you start. So I'm covered up to $5 million,
This
which costs me
Doyle
about.
demo costs so much because it's dangerous
Hmm.
and it's a crap ton of work. You're not just knocking things over.
Yeah, I have a demo crew that basically, if I have enough work, will just go and demo ahead of the rest of us that will come and do the installation. So it's dirty work. It's where everybody has to start. You start at the bottom, you do demo, and then you learn how to build back up from there. But you take it down a certain way and you build it back up a certain way, and it's going to have predictable outcomes, which is really what you want in business. You want
Yeah.
predictable outcomes to
Well, yeah.
alleviate the excesses, the losses, the downtime, the delays, the extra trips to the store, all of those things.
Andrew Kelly is saying he doesn't want to pay a portion to start a business, and that depends on the kind of business you want to start.
Depends on the state too. I've heard in California it can cost you as much as $5,000 for a business license. In Colorado, mine
Hmm.
cost me $10 online.
City of LA is particularly horrible. That's why there are so
So
many
that's
empty warehouses.
it's those background processes that people don't know. I mean, that's an easy start to start a business. Your business license with the state, it still costs me $10 a year to stay in business as my company. But it's the other things like filing for permits, paying permit fees, having inspections. Now, these things are supposed to protect the homeowner and the value of the real estate, hence the bank. So the banks are the ones that are pushing for all of the back end stuff. They want to make you go to an architect and an engineer and get permission to pull down this wall. When I know and the homeowner who I'm telling it's not a load bearing wall. Doesn't matter, requires a stamp. A stamp is a tax, and it's also 3 days of downtime. It's the day that I have to put up the proposal, the day to take it down there and pay the tax, and then the day that the inspector comes whenever he's supposed to come between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m.
And
So those are 3 down days that add cost to any job that's required to get a permit. That's why you'll get contractors that don't pull permits is because it's not because they don't do the work
it's
according.
not just the banks. See, the ranch I'm on, it was bought cash. Right,
uh,
my dad owns it outright, no loan on it, and he wants to put a big steel ag building to park the tractors in and work on vehicles and have a workshop because the garage got turned into a staging area for events for reasons that are definitely not female in persuasion. Shut up! You're not allowed to say that. Um, and so, guess how long we've been with a big, nice, flat dirt worked area, but no ag building.
oh, I'd say over a year.
Not quite. It's been 10 months.
Jeez.
10
Yeah.
months. It went down there with all the engineering, with engineering for the prefab ag building itself, and for a concrete pad to put it on, and for retaining walls. And then it's like, oh, well, now we want a soil sample for the property that you own that has never had any kind of hazardous activity on it.
Yeah, and then that they want a biological study done. I had a client that had to take out a retaining pond because the EPA came in and said that he didn't have the proper permits, and he was paying a $50 a month fine for having a retaining pond for his agriculture. And this stuff happens all over. It's now in Boulder, especially, they want you to file plans so that they can assess you more taxes. See, they already assessed the house when it was worth 100,000. They were making property taxes on that. Now you tore that down and you're putting up $1 million house. They want more in your county assessors. They make property tax, so everything based on the tax
Mm-hmm.
structure. It's the bank and the insurance company and the city,
Well, yeah,
county, and
that's why my
state.
father doesn't like taking out loans for any of his personal property anymore. He only does line of credit for business.
Yeah, those are barriers to entrance. Okay, so those are, do you
Like,
have to get
yeah,
an
it's
EPA
like
study?
not only like just the licensure, not only just business insurance, but now you have to go through the permitting hoops
Yeah, so in my city,
to do something as simple as putting a new shower valve in. Probably in a lot of municipalities, you
yeah,
need a
I would
permit
say
for it.
in my city, I'll use the shower valves as an example because there is a code required for it. I have to tell four entities or three. Sorry, the federal government doesn't care about a shower valve here, but I have to tell my city, my county, and my state that I'm doing that work, so that each one of them knows that I increased the value of the house by $100 shower valve. I know it is ridiculous,
Yeah,
but these
yeah.
are these are the barriers of business that no, we don't have a complete form of capitalism, a voluntary exchange of goods and services between the person who wants it and myself,
Well,
because they
what value does a bureaucracy add? And if it
um,
was so valuable, then why don't people do it voluntarily?
well, in in my company, it is sort of that purest form of capitalism. Somebody wants something done. I know how to do it. They buy it. I show up. I install it for them. I can understand that if, let's say, you have a company that's out there using the streets all day, like FedEx, should they be taxed because of their usage on the street a certain amount so that the roads don't fall apart? So don't. I have, it's the same thing with funding for schools. Right
Well,
now in Denver,
here's something that a rural person like me knows. We don't have compulsory fire department. You opt in.
wow, okay.
If you don't pay for your fire department sort of your annual subscription, I don't know what they call it, but you opt into the fire protection plan, and if you call the fire department out for anything, then it's covered. But if you're not paying it, then they send you a bill.
Well, and in Boulder, half of Boulder is flat at 6,000 feet, and the other half
So
is mountains.
For the FedEx thing, then why does it need to be taxed? Why can't it be a use fee?
Right, and I would agree. Everything should be a use tax or a flat tax would be better. However, my example is that in Boulder, a flat tax wouldn't work for, say, your fire insurance because everybody in the city that's on the flat part of Boulder County has a much less of a chance of being in a fire. Everybody in mountainous Boulder, where we've had fires every year, and their home burns down, should pay more in their taxes for their fire tax. And we have the same thing here. Their fire district charges them the same amount as it charges me. It's the same rate. The problem with that is it's like a person saying, why should I pay this much in property tax that goes to schools? I don't have any kids.
Yeah.
So Boulder is the highest taxed city and county in the state of Colorado. It has enough money to do just about anything. The property taxes alone.
Including run a hotel jail.
Yeah, yeah, I could talk about that socialism part. Boulder County Jail is a hotel compared to any other that I've ever heard of or been in. Um,
The
so
fewer
yeah,
points of comparison you have, the better.
yeah, I only have two other forms of comparison, and they both were way worse. So, but here's my point. Okay, while I'm in jail, regardless of where it is, there's somebody in Africa that's walking 5 hours each way for his one her she's doing the work in most cases to go and get their daily allotment of water.
Yeah,
Now
she's doing the
these
work for the
people
water while the man is like digging a trench or something,
or not doing anything.
or dead.
Um, so then those people in this world, 3 billion live in abject poverty like that, what I described. They would love to come to America, break the law, go to jail. Basically, these people have everything in jail. They have all their food brought to them. They have free water, shower whenever you want, flush as many toilets as you want, drink as much water as you want. Um, it's and then you sit around and read and watch TV the whole day. This is like a cushy life. People that cannot make it on the outside love it in
You know,
jail.
while a select few run all of the bits of the jail that make it work, like the kitchen, janitorial, stuff
Yeah,
like
generally the
that.
more industrious people. That's why
Like
there is a hierarchy. Yeah,
and like they give you some benefits, but there's no profit motive. Let's talk about the kind of workers you get without a profit motive a little bit.
hmm. Well, if you have a group of 10 people and there's no profit motive and everybody's being paid the same, you will have three that work their ass off and you will have three that do not. And then you'll have the other four people just kind of in the middle, standing around, not hindering, but doing a little bit of work. There's a scale and you see it in every form of life. So it's just what kind of person do you want to be when nobody's watching and nobody's paying? Well, that's down to
Well, that would be
your
down to your ethics.
personal responsibility. I know that's what makes me a conservative is personal responsibility. I don't judge the people that have more than me. I
Well,
just want to work a little bit harder to have what I want. And what if I want isn't a BMW? It's not a bigger house. It's not more shit. What if all I want is to be as comfortable as I can be with my kids and have enough to eat? That means I don't have to work as hard as I do. That means I don't have to work Saturdays and Sundays. I mean, I can make less money, and sometimes less is more, but it's the amount that I am willing to invest in to earn what I receive.
Well, yeah, everything in life is a trade-off between one thing and another. You can have more money, but then you have less time.
Yeah,
Like,
let's take some questions from I don't even know who's still in here.
we've got Andrew Kelly and Fistio Doyle are having a conversation about jail.
Oh,
Uh,
well, did they have any questions about jail?
well, no, I think the everyone's questions about jail were covered last time. I just wanted to kind of point out that jail is a whole lot like socialism. And dang it, I forgot what I was going to say. I did have a point though. It's gone. It's gone now. But
Yeah. So Fisty O'Doyle says the jail prison system houses people that want a free ride and no bills. There are people in there definitely doing that. These people have, but they have responsibilities on the outside. They have a good-ish life. They have a job probably that they hate. They have, stuff on the outside, but it's just too much for. They want to be taken care of. So this guy that I met, he's doing a year and he's like, it's great. I love it. They bring me all the food that I want and I don't have to do shit. And it was fine for him. The other thing that jail does is it houses our mentally ill citizens more so than any mental hospital
well,
that we no
yeah.
longer have.
Uh,
So we've subsidized and moved the mental health facilities
the
that we
book
should be putting these people in
the book you'll
into
want to
jail.
read is American Psychosis. It won't. I don't really have a solution for what happened, but what we're doing, just putting people in nursing homes and jails, is not good because you don't get treatment in jails. In fact, a jail is probably the worst possible place to put like a schizophrenic.
Very much so. They have their own wing, and it's hard not only on them psychologically, it's hard on the people that have to take care of them, the jail guards, the nurses, the administrators. They don't like working in that area of the
Well, they
jail.
didn't sign
There's
up for that. They signed up for guarding criminals, not trying to take care of
right.
schizophrenics or.
Oh, and the jail bailiff or jail deputy is the lowest form of law enforcement, just above mall security guard. That is just is what it is. If you look in the industry, they are paid the least, they are trained the least, they care the least, and they're probably not capable of doing like a real police patrol type of job, dealing with the real public and solving problems or creating problems, depending on who you listen to. Some of the auditors from
Over in
this guy's stream.
yeah, over at the Fender stream, but you know, as a right wing anarchist, which somehow makes me a Nazi, um, I do have quite a few criticisms of policing in general, but we can get into those at a later date. We have gone
Absolutely.
for an hour and a half. I think it'd be a good plan to wrap up because I forgot my earlier point, but it's niggling in the back of my mind that it was probably a good one.
Does anybody have any final questions before we go? Are they just chatting amongst themselves?
Sure, Cold as Ice Bear, I'm sure it did change it from yellow to black, but I'm pretty sure you're just a racist. We'll have to wait a sec for it to catch up. You're out of focus, by the way.
I am. Okay. Not
You're
sure why that is.
It's probably your laptop probably has autofocus on it. Yeah, yeah, and now you're going zooming in and out.
Hmm.
Autofocus is terrible.
That's all right. I'm on my
Yeah,
phone. This camera, so
Ficio Doyle wonders how we can fix the jail system.
make it voluntary. um, I think if you wanted to start somewhere, it would be better training. Um, you're already in jail. There are ways that they intentionally make it harder on you to both be in jail. So as somebody who's in there, you're in there with everybody from mentally ill homeless people to this guy was a CEO of a large company in Boulder. So, the entire spectrum, and they're all treated the same regardless of the situation. I think that there would be a way to classify inmates a little bit better that would not put the dangerous next to
I
the less
mean,
dangerous.
yeah, maybe don't put the guy in for simple possession right next to the schizophrenic guy who stabbed a lady 17 times with a spork.
Yeah, there's no good question as far as or good answer when it comes to that question. However, what I have seen from a few places around the world, how they treat their inmates does provide better outcomes. So this is in our society, this is a much more of a punishment than it is a rehabilitation.
Well, we
So
could start with decriminalizing nonviolent offenses or victimless
yeah, absolutely
offenses, not nonviolent, because fraud should still be punished for sure. Fraud is
right.
like,
And
yeah, fraud is that's still a crime.
victimless crime should not require jail time, and that goes from the
Well,
drug
it's, yeah,
war.
that's even if like for to my mind, if you want to destroy your own body, go ahead. But uh, maybe for like other victimless things, community service at most, or like
Cold as
parking
Ice Bear
tickets or
asks,
whatever.
Yeah, it'd be community service. Is it was another or alternatives to being housed in a correctional facility. There are tons of alternatives that work out better. The what do you think about safe injection sites? Well, Denver just got their first safe injection site back before Christmas, and I'm sitting in jail with three people watching this news program that announces the new injection site. All three of them were in jail for using drugs while they were homeless. So, I should ask them what do they think about it because they're in jail, their freedom has been taken away, their lives have been completely altered for the rest of their life, and
See, the whole thing about my drug war position is if you want to destroy your body, go for it. And some of the drugs aren't even all that destructive. Like marijuana's got more negative side effects than people would like to admit, but it's pretty safe compared to the other illegal drugs and some of the legal ones. But the thing is don't ask me to pay for your drug habits. Don't ask me to pay for you to have a safe house to shoot up in. Don't ask me to pay for you to have clean needles. Don't ask me to pay for you to have joint paper, for God's sake. I don't care what your drug is. I am not going to pay for any part of your habit. Sorry, I
yeah,
had to
I
take that
completely
question.
agree. Completely agree. Do not ask anybody to pay for it. And the reason why we put them in jail for doing these things is to keep them away from the people that don't do drugs. We segregate them out of society and criminalize their behavior. What I would prefer to see if you're going to segregate them out of society, yes, B West, put them in San Francisco and then wall it off. And just like that movie Escape from LA, where you can do whatever you want, all the prisoners go to LA. Let's do that. Let's put all of our drug users and prisoners in LA and then just make a wall around it.
Well, let's put the prison in LA and the rehab in San Francisco. There we go. That makes sense, right?
And well, we have arbitrary lines like why is gambling legal in Vegas and it's not legal in Denver? One's illegal. Why? Oh, because we want to keep that activity
Well,
away
that's
from the rest of society because we deem it harmful to society. So
well
again, it's an arbitrary
because
distinction.
Nevada is one of the few states that never criminalized gambling in the first place. And almost every other state, it's only legal on Indian reservations because they didn't have sin laws until they did, and they just never criminalized gambling.
Montana legalized statewide gambling back in the early 90s. And the reason for it was because they saw the trend of all of the Native American reservations, which they have a lot of legalizing gambling. And what they didn't want was their citizens to go out of country, which is what you do when you are on a reservation. You leave the United States and enter a sovereign domestic nation, and all of your money stays there as well. So they couldn't tax it. So what Montana did is they just
Yeah,
legalized it
well,
statewide.
the,
Yes, Fistio Doyle, I agree with
we
that.
talked a little bit about how different tribes have different cultures and how the Bureau of Indian Affairs sort of messes everything up. I think we talked about that last time.
Yes, yes, we did.
Yeah, we did. We went and we need to go ahead and wrap this up before we get lost in
Yep.
the weeds again because I'm
Yeah.
getting
Oh,
hungry and
yeah, I
there's
agree.
a
I need a
tri-tip
salad.
that needs to be eaten. So, um,
Well, you all
I'm
have a great night.
yeah. You have a good night, Boulder. Everyone wishes you a good night as well, and see you later. All right, everyone. That was Boulder, deep in enemy territory, making sure to fight for capitalism and sanity. This has been Field Talk. Field, also known as Field Bears. If you enjoyed the stream, please go ahead and hit the like button. And if you'd like to see more, you can subscribe. If you would like to support the show, you can buy the Superior Handsome Mug at the link labeled mug in the description below this video. or you can go to paypal.me/fieldtalk to throw me some shekels. You can also follow me on the socials in the link below. The Instagram is only photos of the ranch. Nothing political, only happy good times. So have a great night, and sorry for the technical difficulties. I promise I am not a boomer.